The crystalline chamber floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a neutron star that pulsed with ancient energy. Inside the massive structure, 12 species gathered around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. These were the members of the Galactic Council, civilizations so old that some had forgotten what their homeworlds originally looked like. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years without challenge. Ambassador Zekthor stood at the center of the chamber. His reptilian body was covered in green scales that shimmered under the artificial lights. He had done this presentation hundreds of times before, and each time it ended the same way. His long tail swayed behind him as he activated the holographic display. "Honored council members," Zekthor began, his voice smooth and practiced. "I present to you our latest discovery, a world they call Earth." The hologram showed a blue and green planet, beautiful and full of life. The council members leaned forward with interest. "Water worlds were always valuable. The inhabitants call themselves humans," Zekthor continued. "They have just achieved basic space travel. Their technology is primitive. They still use chemical rockets and have only visited their own moon. They have no shields, no energy weapons, and no faster-than-light travel." An insectoid council member clicked its mandibles together. "What resources does this world offer?" Zekthor smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Abundant rare earth minerals, deep oceans filled with hydrogen and precious metals, and a population of 8 billion potential workers who are eager for our guidance." The council members nodded to each other. This was standard procedure. They had incorporated 846 worlds in exactly this way. The pattern never changed. On Earth, in a conference room in Geneva, the leaders of humanity's unified government watched the same presentation from the other side. The alien transmission had arrived 3 days ago, and the world had not stopped talking about it since. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the back of the room, her arms crossed over her military uniform. She had been called in as a security consultant, but nobody seemed interested in her concerns. The politicians were too excited about the promises the aliens had made. "They are offering us medicine that can cure cancer," President Okonkwo said, his eyes bright with hope. "Technology that can end hunger. Clean energy that will stop climate change. How can we refuse this?" "By reading the fine print," Chen said quietly. She had spent the last 3 days studying every word of the council's offer. Something felt wrong. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's chief scientist, looked up from her tablet. "Captain Chen is right to be cautious. I have been analyzing the star charts they sent us. There are gaps in their data, 12 systems that appear on older maps but are missing from the new ones. Perhaps those systems were simply renamed," the Secretary General suggested. "Or perhaps they were used up," Chen replied. She pulled up an image on the main screen. "I had our deep space telescopes focus on one of those missing systems. Look what we found." The room fell silent. The image showed a solar system, but something was terribly wrong. The planets were gray and lifeless. The oceans were gone. Even the atmosphere had been stripped away. "This could be natural," someone protested weakly. "All 12 systems?" Tanaka asked. "All showing the same pattern of resource extraction. That is not natural. That is industrial." President Okonkwo rubbed his temples. He looked tired. The weight of the decision was crushing. "What you are suggesting is that we refuse first contact with an advanced alien civilization because of a suspicion. If we are wrong, we condemn Earth to remain isolated. Our children will die of diseases that could be cured. Our planet will continue to warm. We will remain alone in the universe." "And if we are right," Chen said softly, "we might condemn them to something worse." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Humanity was desperate. Climate change was accelerating. Political tensions were high despite the unified government, and the promise of alien technology was too tempting to refuse. 2 weeks later, Earth sent its acceptance. Ambassador Zekthor received the news with satisfaction. Another world would join the Council's empire. He began preparing the resource collectors for deployment. The massive ships arrived 3 months later. They were the size of cities, floating in Earth's orbit like metal moons. The Council had called them resource collectors, but up close they looked more like weapons. Their hulls were scarred and ancient, marked with the symbols of hundreds of extinct civilizations. The ships descended into Earth's oceans and began their work. At first, everything seemed fine. The Council delivered the promised technology. Hospitals received new medical equipment. Scientists got access to advanced computers. Energy plants were upgraded with fusion reactors that ran clean and efficient, but the ocean levels began to drop. Captain Chen stood on a beach in California, watching the water recede. In just 6 months, the sea level had dropped 3 meters. Coastal cities were experiencing strange flooding patterns as underground water tables collapsed. The sand beneath her feet was scattered with dead fish and dying coral. "They are taking too much," she said into her communicator. President Okonkwo's voice came back, strained and worried. "We have filed a formal complaint with the Council. They say they are operating within the parameters of the agreement. What agreement allows them to drain our oceans? The one we signed without reading carefully enough." Chen felt anger rise in her chest. "There must be something we can do. The legal team is reviewing the contract now. But Chen, you need to see this. I'm sending you a file," her tablet buzzed. Chen opened the document and felt her blood run cold. The contract was 10,000 pages long, written in legal language so complex that even Earth's best lawyers had trouble understanding it. But buried in Section 4847, subsection 12, paragraph 94, was the clause that doomed them. The Council had unlimited resource extraction rights for a period of 50 years. In exchange, Earth had received technology worth, according to Council calculations, exactly the value of the resources they would take. There were no limits on extraction rates, no environmental protections, no way to cancel the agreement early. Earth had been conquered without a single shot fired. "They have done this before," Tanaka said during an emergency meeting. "This is their method. They offer desperate civilizations exactly what they need, hide the true cost in legal complexity, and by the time anyone realizes what happened, it is too late." "Can we fight them?" someone asked. Chen looked at the military assessment on her screen. Earth had nuclear weapons, conventional armies, and a small fleet of orbital defense platforms. The Council had thousands of ships, energy weapons that could vaporize continents, and shields that could stop anything Earth could throw at them. "Not yet," she said quietly, "but maybe someday." President Okonkwo looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. They all knew the truth now. They had been tricked. Humanity had become a slave species, and the chains were already tightening around their necks. "Then we need to start preparing," he said finally, "in secret. Today we are victims, but I will not let that be our future." Chen nodded slowly. An idea was forming in her mind. It was dangerous and possibly insane, but humans had always been good at one thing: surviving when the odds were impossible. "I will need a team," she said, "and I will need you to trust me." Far above Earth in the Council chamber, Zekthor filed his latest report. Everything was proceeding normally. The humans were complaining, as all new species did, but they would adapt. They always did. He had no idea that humanity was not like the other species. He had no idea that he had just made the biggest mistake of his very long life. 9 months had passed since the Council ships arrived, and Earth was dying slowly. The oceans had dropped 6 meters. Entire coastal ecosystems had collapsed. Indonesia had lost half its islands. The Maldives had simply ceased to exist. And still the massive resource collectors drank from the seas, their pumps working day and night without pause. The Council sent aid, of course. They always did. Ships arrived carrying processed food blocks that tasted like cardboard and smelled like chemicals. Water tankers brought back a tiny fraction of what they had taken, recycled and purified. The message was clear. Earth would survive, but only as long as they remained obedient. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the briefing room of a secret military facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her sat 20 of Earth's best soldiers, scientists, and intelligence officers. They were the core of what President Okonkwo had named the Defiance Protocol. "We are going to steal a Council data station," Chen announced. The room erupted in worried whispers. One of the officers, Commander Marcus Webb, leaned forward. "That is suicide, Captain. Those stations are automated and heavily defended." "Yes," Chen agreed. "That is why I am only asking for volunteers." Every hand in the room went up. 3 weeks later, Chen's team floated in space near the edge of the solar system. Below them, a Council data relay station spun slowly in the darkness. It was a small structure, barely the size of a bus, but it was connected to the entire Council network. If they could access it, they might finally understand what they were truly facing. Remember, Chen whispered into her helmet communicator. We have 30 minutes before the next data burst. If we are still here when that happens, every council ship in the sector will know we are here. The team moved in silence. Years of training had prepared them for combat in space. But this was different. They were not fighting human enemies. They were fighting technology centuries more advanced than anything Earth possessed. Dr. Tanaka had designed a special device for this mission. It was a simple concept, a computer virus wrapped in a physical package that could fool the station's security. She called it a Trojan horse after the ancient Earth story. They attached the device to the station's data port. For 10 long seconds, nothing happened. Then the station's lights flickered and went dark. We are in, Tanaka whispered from mission control back on Earth. Downloading now. The data flowed into their systems. Petabytes of information written in languages Earth computers could barely translate. But slowly, with Tanaka's help, the truth began to emerge. Chen read the files on her screen and felt her heart sink. Earth was not the first. It was not even in the first 100. The Council had used this same method 846 times, and every single civilization had fallen for it. The files showed world after world reduced to lifeless rocks. Species that had once thrived, now extinct or scattered across the galaxy as slave labor. The Council called it the Integration Protocol. It had worked perfectly for 10,000 years. Captain, you need to see this, Webb said, pulling up another file. It is their military doctrine. Chen studied the document. It was shocking in its simplicity. The Council had no real military strategy because they had never needed one. Economic subjugation always worked first. If a species resisted, they simply accelerated the resource extraction until the civilization collapsed. No battles, no risks, just cold efficiency. They have not fought a real war in 10,000 years, Chen breathed. They have forgotten how. Back on Earth, Dr. Tanaka made her own discoveries. She had been reverse engineering captured Council technology for months, and what she found surprised her. The technology was sophisticated, certainly more advanced than Earth's, but it was not innovative. Every device she examined was thousands of years old, barely modified from the original design. They have stopped evolving, Tanaka explained to President Okonkwo. Every Council species is biologically immortal. They live for thousands of years, which sounds wonderful, but it means they have no new generations bringing fresh ideas. They have been using the same ships, the same weapons, the same tactics for millennia. And we have been advancing our technology constantly, Okonkwo realized. Exactly. We are still primitive compared to them, but we are innovative in ways they have forgotten how to be. A plan began to form. It was audacious and possibly insane, but it was also humanity's only chance. Earth would pretend to remain compliant while secretly preparing for war. They would use the Council's own technology against them, reverse engineering and improving everything they could steal. They would build ships in hidden facilities scattered throughout the asteroid belt, and they would wait for the perfect moment to strike. The hardest part was keeping up the appearance of submission. Earth's government filed regular reports with the Council, complaining about resource extraction rates but ultimately accepting the situation. They allowed Council inspectors to visit Earth cities. They even sent human delegates to attend Council meetings on distant worlds. Meanwhile, in secret, humanity armed itself. Chen led the military side of the operation. Using captured Council ships as templates, Earth's engineers began building a fleet. They could not match Council technology exactly, but they could create something unexpected. Earth's ships were smaller, faster, and packed with weapons the Council had never seen before. Missile swarms that could overwhelm shields through sheer numbers. Kamikaze drones that could be controlled by AI. Nuclear-pumped lasers that generated power from warheads. Railguns that fired projectiles at relativistic speeds. Earth took every weapon of war from its violent history and adapted them for space combat. 6 months into the project, disaster nearly struck. A Council inspector arrived unannounced at one of the asteroid facilities. The facility went dark immediately, pretending to be nothing more than a mining operation. But the inspector was suspicious. Chen watched from mission control as the Council ship approached the hidden base. Her hand hovered over the abort button. If she pressed it, the facility would self-destruct, destroying all evidence but also killing the 300 workers inside. Then something unexpected happened. One of the workers, a young engineer named Pavel Volkov, did something brilliant. He staged an accident, causing a small explosion in the mining equipment. Nothing serious, but enough to create chaos and confusion. The council inspector decided the facility was simply a poorly run human operation and left in disgust. Chen made sure Volkov received a medal. He would never be able to tell anyone why. As the months passed, Earth's fleet grew. 1 ship became 10. 10 became 50. 50 became 200. Each ship was built in a different location and then hidden in the vast darkness of the asteroid belt. The council, confident in their control, never suspected, but Ambassador Zekthor was beginning to have doubts. Small things kept appearing in Earth's reports, minor inconsistencies, explanations that did not quite make sense. He mentioned his concerns to the council, but they dismissed him. Earth was behaving exactly as expected, complaining but ultimately compliant. Still, Zekthor decided to visit Earth personally. He would attend a compliance ceremony where Earth's leaders would formally acknowledge council authority. It would be a show of dominance and a chance to investigate his suspicions. He assembled a small fleet of 12 ships and set course for Earth. It was more than enough firepower to intimidate any potential resistance. In 10,000 years, the council had never needed more. The ceremony was scheduled for 6 months away. That gave Earth exactly enough time to finalize their preparations. In the asteroid belt, the last ship rolled out of the hidden construction facility. Earth's fleet was complete. 200 warships, each crewed by volunteers who knew they might not survive the coming battle. They were not as advanced as council ships, but they had something the council had forgotten: the hunger to fight for their freedom. President Okonkwo gave the final authorization. The plan was in motion. When Zekthor arrived, he would find more than a compliance ceremony waiting for him. He would find a trap. Ambassador Zekthor felt pleased as his fleet entered Earth's solar system. 12 council ships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single blast, moved in perfect formation toward the blue planet. It was a show of power meant to remind the humans of their place. He had planned this ceremony carefully. Earth's leaders would gather in Geneva and formally acknowledge council authority. There would be speeches about cooperation and mutual benefit. The humans would kneel, as all species eventually did. Then Zekthor would return to the council chambers with another successful integration on his record. His command ship entered orbit around Earth's moon. Zekthor sent the standard greeting message and waited for the response. Instead of President Okonkwo's voice, he heard something unexpected. It was a recorded message, and it started with words that made his blood run cold. Ambassador Zekthor, President Okonkwo's voice said calmly, "You came here expecting us to kneel. You thought we would accept our chains quietly. You made a critical mistake. You should have checked whether humans were prey or predators." Alarms started blaring across Zekthor's command ship. His tactical officer shouted in panic, "Sir, we have multiple contacts. They are coming from the asteroid belt. Hundreds of them." Zekthor stared at the display screen in disbelief. Red dots were appearing everywhere surrounding his fleet. 200 ships emerged from hiding, each one broadcasting Earth identification codes. They were crude compared to council vessels, their hulls covered with strange weapons he did not recognize. But there were so many of them. "This is impossible," Zekthor whispered. "They do not have this technology. They should not have been able to build a fleet." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the ECS Defiance, Earth's flagship. Around her, the crew worked with focused intensity. This was the moment they had spent a year preparing for. There was no room for mistakes. "All ships, this is Defiance," Chen said into the communication system. "Execute attack pattern Delta. Show them what happens when you corner a predator." The Earth fleet did not charge straight at the council ships like Zekthor expected. Instead, they scattered in every direction, breaking into small groups that moved unpredictably. It was chaos, the opposite of the council's perfect geometric formations. "What are they doing?" Zekthor demanded. "Pursue them. Maintain formation." His ships turned ponderously, trying to track the fast-moving human vessels. The council had designed their ships for intimidation and resource extraction, not for combat against an agile enemy. They were powerful but slow. The first human attack came from an unexpected direction. A swarm of missiles, dozens of them, streaked toward a council destroyer. The destroyer's shields activated automatically, the same shields that had protected council ships for 10,000 years. The missiles exploded against the shields. The destroyer's captain smiled in relief. The primitive human weapons had failed. Then the second wave hit. And the third. And the fourth. Hundreds of missiles, overwhelming the shield generators through sheer numbers. The shields flickered and failed. The destroyer's hull cracked open, spilling atmosphere into space. One down, Chen said quietly. Continue the assault. The Battle of Luna had begun. Zekthor watched in horror as his fleet came under attack from every angle. The humans were not fighting like any species he had encountered. They used kamikaze drones that threw themselves at his ships. They fired weapons that accelerated metal slugs to impossible speeds. They employed nuclear bombs to power laser beams. It was barbaric. It was savage. It was terrifyingly effective. Return fire, Zekthor ordered desperately. Destroy them all. The Council ships finally began firing their energy weapons. Bright beams of concentrated power lanced through space, vaporizing any human ship they touched. But hitting the fast-moving Earth vessels was nearly impossible. The humans seemed to predict where the beams would fire and moved away before the weapons could lock on. Dr. Tanaka had studied Council tactics for months. She knew their ships relied on automated targeting systems that followed predictable patterns. Earth ships had been programmed to exploit those patterns, making them almost impossible to hit. Commander Webb led a squadron of 20 ships in a daring assault on a Council carrier. His ships dove straight toward it, firing everything they had. The carrier's shields held, but Webb had expected that. At the last moment, his ships split apart, each one flying past the carrier on a different vector. The carrier's automated defenses tried to track all 20 ships at once and became confused. Its systems locked up for 3 precious seconds. That was all Webb needed. His ships turned and fired at the carrier's hangar bay doors, the one part of the ship that could not have shields while fighters were launching. The doors exploded inward. Atmosphere rushed out, carrying fighters and crew into the void. 2 down, Chen reported. Keep the pressure on. Zekthor realized with growing panic that he was losing. This was not supposed to happen. The Council did not lose. They had not lost a battle in 10,000 years. But his fleet was being torn apart by a species that had barely reached space a century ago. Retreat, he ordered. Fall back to defensive positions. But there were no defensive positions. The humans had chosen the battlefield carefully. Zekthor's ships were trapped between Earth and Luna, surrounded on all sides. Chen saw the Council ships trying to regroup and smiled coldly. This was the moment she had been waiting for. All ships target the flagship. Let us send the Council a message they will never forget. The Defiance led the charge. Every human ship in range turned toward Zekthor's command vessel and opened fire simultaneously. Missiles, railgun slugs, laser beams, all converging on a single target. Zekthor's shields held for 10 seconds, then 15. Then they collapsed under the overwhelming firepower. His command ship shuddered as explosions tore through its hull. Abandon ship, Zekthor screamed. Get me to an escape pod now. He reached the pod bay just as a missile struck the command deck. The explosion threw him forward into a pod. He slammed his hand on the launch button and the pod fired, carrying him away from his dying ship. Behind him, the flagship broke in half and exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Chen watched the destruction and felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. Open a channel to the entire fleet. Maximum broadcast range. Her communications officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. You are broadcasting to every ship in the solar system and beyond. The Council will receive this transmission. Chen stood straight, looking directly into the camera. She knew this message would change everything. People of the galaxy, my name is Captain Sarah Chen of Earth. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has ruled through deception and economic slavery. They came to our world promising peace and prosperity. Instead, they began destroying our planet. Today, we fought back. Today, we won. To every species suffering under Council rule, I say this: resistance is possible. Freedom is worth fighting for, and humanity will stand with anyone brave enough to join us. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of subjugated worlds, people watched the broadcast. They saw the burning Council ships. They saw the human fleet standing victorious, and for the first time in millennia, they saw hope. In the Council chambers, the 12 elder species watched the same broadcast. The room fell silent. This is unprecedented, one of them finally said. They must be exterminated, another declared. Immediately, before this rebellion spreads. High Executor Velshara, a towering crystalline being who had led the Council for 3,000 years, stood slowly. Her body reflected the light in strange patterns. When she spoke, her voice was cold as deep space. "Assemble the extinction fleet," she ordered. 5,000 ships. We will turn Earth into a warning that will last for another 10,000 years. Back on Earth, Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched Zekthor's escape pod being recovered. The battle was over. Earth had lost 40 ships and thousands of brave souls. But they had won. President Okonkwo appeared on her screen. "The Council is going to retaliate. You know this." "Yes," Chen agreed. "This was only the first battle. The real war is coming. Was it worth it?" Chen thought about her crew, about the people of Earth, about the enslaved species across the galaxy. Freedom always is. Deep in space, Zekthor floated in his escape pod, listening to Chen's broadcast repeat across every frequency. He had lived for 800 years and had never experienced defeat. The shame burned worse than any physical injury, but beneath the shame was something else. Something he had not felt in centuries. It was fear. Not fear of punishment or death. Fear of what he had seen in the humans' eyes. They had not fought with calculation or strategy alone. They had fought with rage, with passion, with the fury of a caged animal breaking free. The Council had forgotten that emotions could be a weapon. They had forgotten what desperation could drive a species to do. And now Zekthor realized the entire galaxy was about to learn that lesson. The message continued to broadcast, carried by hijacked Council communication networks to every corner of known space. On a water world called Kresh, aquatic beings heard it and whispered of rebellion. On an insect hive world called Torvan, workers stopped their mining and looked up at the stars. On 100 worlds, the enslaved began to dream of freedom. The Council chambers had never seen such chaos. For the first time in recorded history, the elder species were shouting at each other. Their perfect unity had shattered like glass. "They destroyed 12 of our ships," the Vrelnian representative hissed, his scales turning dark with rage. 12, with primitive technology and crude tactics. "The broadcast has reached 847 worlds," another Council member reported. "Unrest is spreading. Labor output has dropped by 15% across the Empire." High Executor Velshara watched the pandemonium with cold eyes. She had ruled the Council for 3,000 years, maintaining order through careful control and calculated fear. But she had never faced anything like this. The humans had done more than win a battle. They had given the galaxy hope, and hope was more dangerous than any weapon. "Silence," she commanded, her crystalline body pulsing with light. The room fell quiet. "There is only one response to this rebellion: complete extermination. We will make Earth an example that will last another 10,000 years." The Council voted unanimously. For the first time in millennia, they would deploy the Extinction Fleet. The Extinction Fleet was the Council's ultimate weapon, though it had not been used in living memory. 5,000 warships pulled from garrison duties across the galaxy. They would be crewed by soldiers from subjugated species, forced to fight or watch their homeworlds burn. The collars around their necks would ensure obedience. One act of rebellion and explosive charges would detonate, killing the traitor and sending a signal to destroy their homeworld. The fleet would take 6 months to assemble and reach Earth. That gave humanity 6 months to prepare for the end of the world. Captain Sarah. Chen stood in the war room beneath Geneva, staring at the tactical display. 6 months, 5,000 ships. The odds were impossible even by human standards. "We need allies," President Okonkwo said quietly. "We cannot fight this alone." "Then I will find us some," Chen replied. She took a small team and used captured Council jump gates to travel across the galaxy. It was incredibly dangerous. If the Council discovered she was leaving Earth, they would hunt her down. But they needed intelligence and they needed friends. Her first stop was Kresh, the water world whose oceans had been drained just like Earth's. The Kresh were aquatic beings. Graceful and intelligent, their bodies adapted for deep ocean pressure. But their world was dying. The Council had taken 70% of their water over 2 centuries. Chen met with the Kresh resistance leaders in an underwater cavern. They were suspicious at first. Humans were aliens just like the Council. "Why should we trust you?" their leader Veldora asked. She communicated through translated clicks and whistles. "Because we both know what it is like to watch our worlds die," Chen replied. "Because the Council has to be stopped and we cannot do it alone. Because your children deserve to swim in oceans that are not shrinking every day." She showed them footage of the Battle of Luna. She showed them Earth's burning cities and dropping sea levels. She showed them that humans were not conquerors but fellow victims fighting back. "If we help you, the Council will destroy our world," Veldora said. "They are already destroying your world," Chen pointed out. "At least this way you have a chance to stop them." The creche debated for 3 days. Finally, Veldora returned with an answer. "We will send you intelligence. The Council's fleet movements, their ship designs, their strategic weaknesses. We cannot send ships to help you fight. Our people cannot survive in space for long periods. But we can give you the information you need to have a chance." Chen clasped Veldora's webbed hand. "That is more than enough." Next, she traveled to Torvan, a world covered in vast mining operations. The Torvan were insectoid beings, their hive minds making them efficient workers but also capable of coordinated resistance. They had been worked nearly to extinction by the Council, their population reduced from billions to millions. The Torvan Queen met Chen in the deepest mine shaft, surrounded by thousands of her workers. "You defeated 12 Council ships," the Queen said, speaking through a translator device. "But 5,000 are coming. Your species will be extinct in 6 months. Maybe," Chen agreed. "But we will die fighting. And we will take as many Council ships with us as we can. Every ship we destroy is one less that can oppress your world or any other." The Queen's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to be ready," Chen said. "When the extinction fleet arrives at Earth, most of the Council's military power will be in one place. That is when you strike, free your world, and when other subjugated species see that 2 worlds have successfully rebelled, they will join us. You are asking us to risk everything on the hope that you can survive long enough for our rebellion to matter." "Yes," Chen said simply. "I am asking you to bet on humanity. We are young and we are desperate and we are possibly insane. But we do not give up." The Queen was quiet for a long time. Then she made a clicking sound that her workers echoed through the mines. "The Hive has decided. We will help you. And when your battle begins, we will strike at our oppressors." Chen visited 12 more worlds in 3 months. Some refused to help, too afraid of Council reprisal, but others agreed to provide intelligence, supplies, or promises to rebel when the time was right. A network began to form, fragile but real. While Chen traveled, Earth prepared for war. Dr. Tanaka worked day and night on new weapons. She created the Prometheus stations, automated weapons platforms that could be hidden throughout the solar system. Each one was equipped with nuclear-pumped lasers powerful enough to cut through Council shields. The Council's shields are designed to stop particle weapons and missiles, Tanaka explained to the military engineers. But they have weaknesses against coherent radiation. These lasers will slice through their defenses like paper. She also developed something even more dangerous, the Ouroboros virus. It was a computer worm designed to spread through Council networks and corrupt their formation algorithms. Council ships moved in perfect geometric patterns because their computers were all networked together. If that network could be disrupted, their famous formations would collapse into chaos. "Will it work?" Okonkwo asked. "I do not know," Tanaka admitted. "I have tested it against captured Council systems and it works there. But the extinction fleet might have updated security protocols. We will not know until we try." On Earth, volunteers lined up by the millions to join the defense forces. They knew the odds. They knew most of them would die. But they came anyway because the alternative was slavery. Commander Marcus Webb organized what he called the Forlorn Hope. These were crews who volunteered for suicide missions, ramming their ships into Council vessels or guarding critical positions to the death. Webb himself would lead them when the time came. "Why volunteer for certain death?" Chen asked him one day. Webb smiled sadly. "Because my daughter is 3 years old. If we lose, she will grow up as a slave. If we win, she will grow up free. That is worth dying for." The 6 months passed too quickly. The extinction fleet assembled at the edge of Council space, a wall of metal so vast it could be seen from light years away. 5,000 warships carrying enough firepower to crack planets. Zekthor had been forced to join the fleet as punishment for his failure at Luna. He commanded a destroyer in the vanguard, the most dangerous position. It was meant to be humiliating, but Zekthor accepted it without complaint. He had seen something at Luna that the rest of the Council had not. He had looked into human eyes and seen determination that terrified him. High Executor Velshara commanded the fleet from the Inevitability, a dreadnought the size of a small moon. It was 10,000 years old, built in the early days of Council expansion. It had never been defeated in battle because it had never needed to fight. The fleet began its journey to Earth. 5,000 ships moving in perfect formation, a display of power meant to crush any resistance before it began. On Earth, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet. The countdown began. 72 hours until they arrived. Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, surrounded by a fleet of 300 Earth ships. They had built 100 more since Luna, using every resource they could spare. But it was still nothing compared to what was coming. 50 allied ships from various subjugated species had also joined them. Crews who had stolen their vessels and fled to Earth, choosing freedom over survival. Together, they represented the galaxy's first united resistance in 10,000 years. The odds were still impossible. 350 ships against 5,000, but humans had faced impossible odds before. "All ships, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast to the fleet. "In a few hours, the Council will arrive with enough firepower to destroy our world 100 times over. They expect us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. They clearly do not know humans very well." Nervous laughter echoed across the communication channels. "We are going to fight," Chen continued. "Not because we think we can win, not because we are brave, but because we are human and humans do not kneel. Today we send a message to the galaxy. Tyranny dies here." The fleet moved into position. The Prometheus stations activated, hidden among asteroids and debris. The Ouroboros virus waited, ready to upload at the first opportunity. Every ship, every weapon, every last hope was focused on the edge of the solar. The extinction fleet advanced in perfect formation, 5,000 ships moving as one, their geometric pattern flawless and intimidating. High Executor Velshara watched from the bridge of the inevitability with cold satisfaction. This would be over quickly. The humans would see this overwhelming force and surrender, or they would be destroyed. Either way, the rebellion would end today. Captain Sarah Chen saw the same formation from the bridge of the Defiance. Her tactical officer was pale, his hand shaking slightly as he counted the ships. 5,000 confirmed, he reported. "Captain, they outnumber us 15 to 1. "Then we will have to be 15 times as clever," Chen replied calmly. She opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships execute pattern scatter. Do not meet them head on. Make them chase us." The human fleet broke apart, ships flying in every direction. It looked like chaos, like panic. The Council admirals, who had never fought an actual battle, interpreted it as cowardice. "They are fleeing," one admiral reported to Velshara. "Should we pursue?" "Yes," Velshara ordered. "Break formation and hunt them down. I want this finished within the hour." It was exactly what Chen had hoped they would do. As the Council ships broke their defensive formation to pursue, they flew straight into the trap. The Prometheus stations activated. 200 automated weapons platforms, hidden throughout the asteroid belt and disguised as space debris, suddenly came to life. Nuclear warheads detonated deep inside each station, their explosive power channeled into focused laser beams. The beams lanced through space, invisible until they struck their targets. Council shields, designed to stop missiles and particle weapons, did nothing against coherent radiation. The lasers cut through shield generators and hull plating like hot knives through butter. 20 Council ships died in the first 10 seconds. Their captains never even had time to realize they were under attack. They simply exploded, caught completely by surprise. "What is happening?" Velshara demanded. "Where is that fire coming from?" Before anyone could answer, the Ouroboros virus struck. Dr. Tanaka had hidden it inside a fake distress beacon, and a Council ship had automatically scanned it. The virus copied itself across the fleet's networked systems, spreading faster than the Council's outdated security could respond. Ship computers started receiving contradictory orders. Navigation systems disagreed about which direction was forward. Formation algorithms tried to put ships in the same coordinates, causing near collisions. Weapon systems locked up, trying to target enemies that did not exist. The perfect geometric formation collapsed into chaos. Ships drifted out of position. Some collided with each other. Others fired at their own allies by mistake. Chen watched the chaos spread and allowed herself a small smile. "Now we attack. All ships weapons free. Hit them while they are disorganized." The Earth fleet emerged from hiding and struck like sharks smelling blood. Missile swarms overwhelmed individual targets. Railguns fired from unexpected angles. Kamikaze drones sought out command ships and detonated. Zekthor, commanding his destroyer in the vanguard, realized what was happening before most of the fleet. The humans had not run in fear. They had lured the council into a trap, and it had worked perfectly. He made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his long life. He opened a secure channel to Chen, using emergency codes that should have been impossible for her to receive. "Captain Chen," he transmitted. "This is Zekthor. I am transmitting council command codes to you now. Use them to target the flagships. The fleet will fall apart without their commanders." Chen was shocked. "Why are you helping us?" "Because I have lived for 800 years, Zekthor replied quietly. "And I have finally realized that I have spent all that time serving evil. Consider this my attempt at redemption." The command codes appeared on Chen's screens. She hesitated for only a moment, then forwarded them to her tactical officers. "Target all flagships. Authorization codes verified. Fire at will." Earth's weapon systems, now able to identify which ships held council admirals, focused their fire. Command ships began exploding across the battlefield. Velshara watched her fleet fall apart with growing rage. This was impossible. The council did not lose. They had never lost. But her ships were burning, her admirals were dying, and the humans were winning. Then something else happened that shocked everyone. Across the council fleet, crew members began to mutiny. These were not council species crewing the ships. They were subjugated peoples, forced to fight with explosive collars around their necks. The collars would detonate if they disobeyed, sending a signal to destroy their homeworlds. But Chen had broadcast a message 3 hours ago, and that message had changed everything. "The council has been lying to you," Chen's recording played across every ship. "The homeworld destruction protocols are a bluff. They do not have weapons positioned at your worlds because maintaining them would be too expensive. I have proof. Your families are safe. You do not have to fight for your oppressors anymore." The proof appeared on their screens. Satellite images of their homeworlds, all intact, all without council weapons platforms in orbit. The threatened genocide was a lie, a trick to maintain control. And now everyone knew. A Kresh engineer on a council cruiser made the first move. She flooded the ship's corridors with water, drowning the council officers while she and her aquatic crew swam freely. The ship went dark. On a carrier, Torvan workers swarmed the engine room and sabotaged the power systems. The massive ship lost propulsion and began to drift. Across the fleet, subjugated species turned on their oppressors. Without their crews, council ships became coffins for the officers who had relied on fear to maintain control. Commander Marcus Webb led the forlorn hope in their suicide run. 25 ships carrying volunteers who knew they would not return. Their target was a cluster of council carriers whose hangar bays were open, launching fighters. "It has been an honor," Webb transmitted to his squadron. "See you on the other side." They accelerated to maximum speed, their weapons firing continuously. Council point defense systems destroyed most of them, but 3 ships made it through. Webb's vessel was one of them. His ship smashed into a carrier's hangar bay at relativistic speed. The kinetic energy was equivalent to a nuclear bomb. The carrier exploded from the inside out, taking 2 nearby ships with it in the blast. Chen watched Webb's ship disappear from her sensors and felt tears sting her eyes. But there was no time to mourn. The battle was still raging. Velshara realized she was losing control. Half her fleet was dead or disabled. The other half was in chaos, dealing with mutinies and system failures. The humans had done the impossible. They had defeated the extinction fleet, but Velshara had one final weapon: the inevitability itself. The dreadnought was 10,000 years old, built with technology the Council had since forgotten. At its heart was a weapon that had cracked moons and shattered asteroids. The graviton beam, capable of tearing apart the molecular bonds of anything it touched. "Charge the main weapon," Velshara ordered. "Target Earth itself. If we cannot have this world, then no one will." The inevitability's massive power core began to glow. Energy gathered at the ship's bow, visible even from thousands of kilometers away. It would take 60 seconds to fully charge, and then Earth would die. Chen saw the energy build up and felt her heart sink. They had won the battle, but they were about to lose the war. The Defiance's weapons could not damage the inevitability's shields, not before it fired. "All ships," she transmitted, "concentrate fire on the inevitability's main weapon. We have to stop it from firing." Every human ship, every allied vessel, every functional weapon turned toward the massive dreadnought. They fired everything they had. Missiles, railguns, lasers, everything. The inevitability's shields held. 50 seconds until the weapon fired. More ships joined the desperate assault. Even damaged council vessels whose crews had mutinied turned their weapons on Velshara's ship. 40 seconds. The shields began to flicker under the sustained bombardment. 30 seconds, Chen made a decision. Defiance to all ships. We are going in. Cover us. She aimed her ship directly at the inevitability's weapon port and engaged maximum thrust. If she could reach it before it fired, if she could ram her ship into the charging weapon, maybe the backblast would destroy it. 20 seconds. The Defiance accelerated, pushing its engines beyond safety limits. Around it, other Earthships did the same, forming a spearhead aimed at the heart of the dreadnought. 10 seconds. The inevitability's shields collapsed under the concentrated fire. For a brief moment, the weapon was exposed. 5 seconds. Chen's fleet fired everything simultaneously, hundreds of weapons all aimed at a single point. The graviton beam's focusing array shattered. Energy began to backflow into the weapon chamber. Brace for impact, Velshara ordered her crew, realizing too late what was about to happen. The graviton beam detonated inside the inevitability. The energy meant to destroy Earth instead tore through the dreadnought from within. The ship broke apart, its ancient hull unable to contain the catastrophic explosion. Velshara's last thought was one of disbelief. The Council could not lose. It was impossible. And then she was gone, vaporized in the blast. The shockwave from the inevitability's destruction rippled across the battlefield. What remained of the extinction fleet stopped fighting.